Ayo folks, after posting my how to play Infected Like a Pro guide, it received a bunch of love. This user on YouTube, Alice301, requested for me to make a guide on how to play the Chemist, which is something I've been thinking of doing, so this only pushed me a little bit more. I appreciate the suggestions. I just want to mention before getting into this, literally 98% of you are not subscribed. If you enjoy my videos and want to see more of it, make sure to hit subscribe and do your boy a favor and hit the thumbs up button. Without further ado, this is the Chemist guide. I'm going to split this video into 6 different segments, so if there's any part of the video that you'd like to jump to because you're a bit more experienced with the role of Chemist, or there's something in particular that you would like to improve on, then you can jump to that chapter. This is the overview. Boy oh boy, the Chemist. This one is arguably the most deadly role in Deceit 2 at the moment, especially because of its recent buff, which allows you to stack 2 poison vials instead of 1. The Chemist is a slow start to a quick end when used correctly. To play as a Chemist is pretty much a race against time. As soon as the innocent team has picked up the escape key, you're automatically eliminated. When you are playing as the Chemist, your objective is to poison all players, including the infected. Once you have poisoned every player, they will rapidly lose their health until ultimately dying, winning you the game. This is how the poison works. In the beginning of the game, you will start with 1 vial. You also have a cooldown for your second vial. Every time you use a vial, a cooldown will start to refresh it. When you poison a player, they will be informed that they have been poisoned, and they will have a vial beside their name and above their head. Other players will not know they have been poisoned or see any of these indicators to prove that they are. The only way for another player to see if someone is truly poisoned is to have been poisoned themselves. Poison will not affect players until everyone in the lobby has been poisoned, excluding banished players. So for example, if I say I'm poisoned, there's a Chemist, there will be people that don't necessarily understand the role, and they will say, no, you're not. I don't see poison. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, and not understand it. So the only way for you to actually see someone else being poisoned is to be poisoned yourself. Let's talk early game. Now that we've cleared up the basic understanding of how the Chemist works, its pros and cons, let's talk early game and how I believe this role should be used. When starting off, I would advise against using your poison straight away, and I will explain this a little bit later on. I like the infected guide I made. If you haven't seen it, you can press the link in the top right. Early game is all about disruption and delaying tasks from being completed. Wreak havoc. As mentioned earlier, if the innocent team gain the escape key, you're done. So disruption in early game to prevent that progression is key, no pun intended. If you get lucky with a mask or a gas grenade, you can down a few players, either disguised as someone else, causing people to argue and vote each other out. A gas grenade would generally halt task completion if timed perfectly, hitting multiple players. You can also sabotage some tasks when no one is around to see you do it, or if you're using a mask, like the keypads on the Worgen map or the electricity boxes on the Asylum map. Intentionally put the wrong code or the wrong wires, and this will sabotage. Not only does this make task unavailable for 20 seconds, but it also prevents rotations for other players until they've been completed. Let's talk mid-game. Okay, now to explain why you should hold off on your poison unless you poison someone without a microphone instantly. There are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, if you instantly poison someone and they yell out that they have been poisoned, this will motivate players to rush tasks. It also causes you to lose out on using this cool strat, which I'll explain in the tips and tricks segment. Secondly, if you use your poisons and they are now on cooldown and one of these players die in the in-between, this poison has now been wasted as a player has died and you have to wait for a cooldown to use it again. Once the in-between has ended and a player has been killed, this is when I would start using my poisons. Again, as the exception that you poison someone off rip when you join into the game if they haven't got a microphone to communicate it. If there are players that are not communicating with the team, I would try to target these as they won't tell everyone there is a Chemist. As items are becoming available, I would prioritize on obtaining the invisibility medallion as a must, along with the teleporter in case you get into a sticky situation. Let's talk late game. Now we've reached the late game. As you have started poisoning the majority of players that are left, this is where your playstyle will change. Depending on your lobby, players will either speed rush remaining tasks or begin to crack down on who the Chemist is. As the other players who have been poisoned can see who is and who isn't poisoned, this narrows down the potential suspect. I would continue to disrupt slightly. If you have a gun, to knock a few players using a mask or something along those lines to throw them off your trail. This just helps for people to just not necessarily prioritize you as a main suspect, and it allows you to kind of get room to rotate or to go hide or whatever, right? If this isn't possible, your best bet is to hope the infected player kill one of the remaining 3 players so you can inflict poison on the last 2, initiating the end phase. When you reach a point where there is 4 or 3 players, I would hold off on using your poisons in the in-between because, again, the same thing as earlier. If one of them die after you've poisoned them, then the other players can see that that person's been poisoned. They might yell out, I've been poisoned. They now know that they're not the Chemist, along with the fact that they could also potentially die, which would then waste that poison. And now you have to wait on a cooldown. So what I would do, same thing as earlier, wait for the in-between to happen, wait for the infected to kill someone if they do, and then at this point inflict your poison, and this will allow you to be able to execute more people with the poison efficiently. Let's talk endgame. Once everyone has been poisoned, the in-between will come to a halt, and you will stay in reality until the chemist is killed. This gives players a reason to work together to find you and take you out, otherwise they die and you win. At this point in the game, if you are found and being chased, it's time to pop that teleporter in a neat hiding spot. I will show you some of my personal favorite hiding spots in a second. It's time to utilize that invisibility medallion, that's your best friend, and make sure to use it wisely as it only has a limited time use. Let's talk tips and tricks. Okay, so first up, this is a cool strat I was talking about. I call this pinning the mimic. As you are the chemist, you can throw players off in the early game by saying you heard someone say that they are a mimic. This will allow people to believe that there is no chemist and not to worry about rushing. You can play this trick up until someone says that there's a chemist, and at which point you can now accuse a specific person that they claim to be mimic, which would then indicate that they are the chemist. It works really well because even if, let's say, you're the chemist and you say, Alex told me he was the mimic, but obviously that's not true because you've been poisoned, and they argue it and then they kill Alex thinking that he's the genuine chemist, poison doesn't leave the match. It stays in the match. It just won't have an effect because not everyone's been inflicted with it. So they will never know if they killed the actual chemist or not. So that's why it works pretty well. Let's talk teleporter tips. When using the teleporter, I would try not to throw it down straight away, as sometimes players will automatically destroy them unless hidden correctly, like these spots on the Worgen map, besides the cage outside or behind this rock outside. With the Asylum map, I personally use these spots, the elevator in particular, or this spot as an alternative. Lastly, some options to throw people off your trail if you get these items by random. If you get a ball and chain or cuffs, I'd suggest holding on to these until players have realized that there is a chemist. The reason for this is that you can cuff yourself or ball and chain yourself and accuse a player that ran in an opposite direction to the players that hear you calling out. This will make players believe that someone has cuffed you or ball and chained you and will assume that they are suspicious. Optimally, the ball and chain is a better item to use, as this is the DLC item which also comes with the chemist, and people will automatically assume whoever chained you is the chemist. Lastly, just to mention, if the chemist dies, players still have the poison icon. So if players believe that the person they killed was the chemist, the poison stays, leaving you to finish off the rest. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more content about Deceit. Appreciate you. We just hit 150 subs and we're trying to hit 200. I hope this helps, and let me know down in the comments if there's any other guides that you want to see, whether that regard like a Guardian, Warden, the new role Seer. I appreciate you and have a good week.
The chemist.
What the
Wow,
fuck?
he just took the dope for himself.
I'm sorry, boys.
I knew back was a sussy ball.
Crazy, my boy.
GG's.
GG's.
GG's.